I just want to know also like where you were and why you were there.
Okay, so I was in United Kingdom in Epsom, in the United Kingdom, visiting Cass while she was in the UK, like kind of touring around and working a little bit. And it was I guess, like when the order came that there were going to be like no, or when they said Canadians need to come home, we were both like in the UK together.
Right. And so you were there visiting, and why was she there?
Working.
You can
Working? Do you want to? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
Jimmy?
guess I can come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess why were you in the UK there?
I was there working. I was doing about 6 months, and I was going to travel around and work to afford it. So,
To the best of your knowledge, kind of what was like the situation like there?
up until just after we left, nobody really cared. It was still, I worked at a hotel, and we had like extra cleaning, and that's about all that was happening. Everything in London was still going full tilt. Yeah, nothing. If Dave wouldn't have come, I wouldn't have come home because I didn't know it was a big deal. So
Yeah. And then yeah, like the Monday before we like left essentially, so that would have been the 16th. We like were out at a pub, like having a good time with a bunch of other people, and like no one seemed to be acting any differently.
Give me kind of like the timeline that you guys were on from when you left Canada to when you got back to Canada.
I left Canada on Christmas, so December 25th. I was planning on coming back in June, and Dave came on the 15th.
I left Canada on the 13th, so I arrived in the UK on the 14th, and then we were there until the 20th of March.
And then when were you guys initially coming home? Cass, you said not till June, but David, when did you initially think you were going to be coming home at?
I thought I was going to be coming home on the 19th of March, but because I booked with American Airlines, I had connections through the US. So Trump had announced on the 11th that there were going to be no more people accepted from the EU. So he put his travel ban on, or vice versa. So not included in that was Ireland and Britain. So I thought, oh, okay, everything's fine. And so when I left on the 13th, there was another announcement, like right when I was supposed to be going through customs, where they actually, like, I don't know if you've been to the Calgary airport, but at customs, they have like this big glass door that's never closed unless you're there at like 5 a.m. They stopped all of us and said, wait here, and shut the door. And like they had some meeting. So we were there for about 25, 30 minutes. Then they let us through. They asked like why we were going and everything else. So then I flew, no problem, from Calgary to Chicago, had a layover in Chicago, and then Chicago to London. Like the flight from Chicago to London was like maybe 10% full, 20%. Like I had a Snapchat of like absolutely no one being in this flight. And then Trump made the announcement like the Sunday or Saturday that, hey, like actually we're adding Ireland and the UK, and American Airlines bumped me off my flight because I wasn't even able to connect through Dallas. So then, yeah, originally supposed to come home on the Thursday, and then booked a bunch of emergency flights, and then eventually got a replacement one with American Airlines through Air Canada. That because Air Canada was just like so busy with their end of things after American Airlines booked it, Air Canada never was able to issue it. So my flight was supposed to be coming home on the 20th originally, and then we had to switch to the 21st, and then we switched back to the 20th. It was just a dumpster fire.
You already mentioned the plane there. What was like kind of the atmosphere of like the airports and the airplanes, especially on the way home?
On the way home, it was pretty intense. So that's when Air Canada and like the Canadian government announced that they were going to be doing like screening before you got on the plane. As far as I know, I don't know about UCAS, like I never saw anyone really screening anybody on the way on the plane.
No, we didn't get screened. It might have been like if you looked sick, they'd stop you, but I didn't see anybody get stopped.
But it was intense because everyone wanted just to have like a carry-on item. So it was just absolute like pandemonium. People trying to find spots for their luggage because obviously it's a transatlantic flight and people don't even know when they're going to get home. So our flight from London to Toronto left probably 10 to 15 minutes late after they got everyone sat down, got all their luggage stored. Tons of people with gloves, masks, the flight attendants, and I assume the pilots too had gloves and masks on as they kind of like loaded up the plane. Yeah, just like kind of like uneasy, I guess.
Yeah, when you walked into, we flew out of Heathrow, and when you walked into Heathrow, it was just tense. Like everyone was just so stressed. And
the machines didn't work. So Air Canada had these little like self check-in kiosks, get your bag tags. They stopped working entirely. Like they wouldn't let you click because the question popped up like, have you had symptoms in the last 14 days? And have you been denied like entry onto a flight in the last 14 days? So you went to click no for both of those and the machines just froze. Like no one really on the ground for Air Canada or any of the airlines knew what was going on. We eventually got told to go in the queue, like the line for the priority desk. But yeah, it probably took, I don't know, like from the time we got into the airport to how they were like funneling us into one direction instead of using different walkways, it was an hour.
Yeah.
I'd bet easy just to get.
Before, does that include, I don't think that even includes us going through security.
Oh God.
That's just getting our bag tags and dropping our bags off.
Yeah. And like, I'm used to having a Nexus where it takes 5 minutes or like Canada where it takes like half an hour and just like no one knew what was happening. And then security was more or less the same. The weirdest thing that happened was the security guard was telling us to move up in line. And there was a lady who was like clearly very uncomfortable by being this close to people, like gloves, long sleeves, face mask, everything. And the security guard, whatever, the TSA agent, whatever she'd be, was like yelling at people to get closer to her. Like kind of like not only not following social distancing, but like mocking it. When I said maybe inappropriately to her, I'm like, oh, I guess no social distancing to the guard. And then she said, well, you're going to be in a plane, so like get used to it. And I was like, I don't know if this is the right message for Heathrow Airport. But then we used like my lounge passes and we didn't even like sit with the riffraff. Like we went and like hung out in the lounge for an hour and a half and it was legitimately calm in there. Like way fewer people, way more people that were kind of like relaxed. A couple drinks helped.
Yeah, so I guess in your experience, how were, I mean, you kind of spoke on this a little bit, but the airport employees themselves, how were they handling it?
Heathrow was like okay, like to like somewhere between like acceptable to like below kind of average. I don't know if that's what you
Yeah,
thought.
I guess it also comes with me saying like London, I'm speaking London kind of specifically. It wasn't a big deal there. So for them, like with the lady practicing social distancing, it just, for them, it's just, it wasn't necessary at the time in like their minds. So I thought that they were kind of below average just because of that, just because like they didn't care, because we didn't know any better.
Yeah, people were like pretty, I guess, aloof would be the word of it there. When we got to Canada, it was like a little more, I don't know. It felt like more relaxed, but it also felt like more organized. So like as we got off the plane, like people did like the super basic white girl and guy clap when we landed because everyone was just like excited to be on Canadian soil. When we got to Toronto, then when we got off the plane, like no issues. There were like three or four Canadian border security agents, like not right when we got off the plane, but before like we'd enter customs. And they asked us 3 questions like, have you had a cough? Do you have a fever? Or do you have a sore throat? And you say no to all 3 because we didn't have them. They handed you a sheet, so front back, that said like, these are the self-isolation guidelines, like please adhere to them. And then we walked through customs. For me, it was really easy because I'd just been to one country. When we actually got to the customs line and said, hey, like this is what's going on. I was there visiting my girlfriend. She's back now too.
Yeah, they asked me a few more, but I was there for longer and I declared more goods. So it was nothing really to do with COVID though. Like they asked what airports I had come from in the last, like since I was there and everything, but I hadn't been to any high risk areas. So it was pretty easy, pretty standard.
Yeah. And then the actual like restaurants, because we were trying to find like stuff to do because we had like 3 or 4 hours to kill in Toronto. So like not all of the stores in the international terminal were even open. When we went into a restaurant like sat and ate, they were practicing like the social distancing. They only had like 50% capacity. So half their tables were just gone. But everyone was like relatively nice about any of it. And then we got on the plane from Toronto to Calgary. And that was honestly, it was a normal flight. Like it was kind of weird. Flight attendants, I think, had masks and gloves. I can't really remember.
Yeah, they did.
Took that flight and got home at about 11, like 30, like 11:45 when we finally landed. And I don't remember getting any questions asked of us as we got off the plane there.
No. I don't think so.
Yeah, then we just went to our car and we've been in my place since.
When Justin Trudeau told Canadians who were abroad to come home, what were your initial thoughts?
Fuck.
I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
I have a friend that was living in Australia for around the same time that I left, and she wasn't going to come home either. It was more serious there than it was in London, but where she was, like, all the restaurants were still open. There were no, like here where it was the 50% capacity and everything, there was none of that. Yeah, so neither of us were planning on coming home. We were just like, oh, we'll stick it out. It'll end soon.
Yeah. I was a little more, I guess, motivated by it because like Cass had a job and like she's a dual citizen, so like she could have stayed in the UK. But I was like, well, I have to come home or else I'm potentially like stuck here. But I ended up, even before like American Airlines tried to get me the flight through Air Canada, I booked a WestJet flight home for the 28th of March, being like, oh, it'll be a couple weeks before this is like a huge deal. And then I got a text from some people saying like, no, like 28th is like not soon enough. So WestJet and Air Canada had like limited flight options that were available. So I ended up booking a flight home for the 23rd of March, canceled the one for the 28th and got a full refund for that. And then we started getting like messages from other people. Like when Trudeau said it's time to come home, we're like, oh, okay, like this is going to be a way bigger deal. Ended up booking flights on the 21st to go from London back to Canada, and then eventually decided to like spend a little bit more money and then get home like a day sooner on the 20th.
Yeah, maybe a question more geared toward Cassidy then. So did those thoughts change eventually?
Yeah, so like after talking to Dave and my mom, they kind of both talked me into, so when it hit like the UK that it was serious, it hit quick. Like the Monday after we left, all the restaurants were ordered to close. Like everything happened really like fast. They were like, you could lose your job, like you could end up like staying there. We had got sent an email from work saying that I was living in employee accommodation. So they were saying we'd have somewhere to live, but like we probably wouldn't have a job. So I didn't want to be stranded there kind of unemployed, like trying to live off one paycheck. Like I just didn't want to end up stuck. So yeah, it did change, but it was more speaking to people back in Canada than.
I guess for you guys have been in quarantine since you got back. I don't know how long have you guys been in quarantine for now?
11 days.
So our first like full day would have been the 21st.
So how is quarantine going then? You have to live with each other for 11 straight days without leaving. So how's it going?
Not as bad as I thought.
Yeah. I guess like fortunately tying into this is like Cass is like planning on moving in. Hope she still does by the end of quarantine. So there's like lots of like cleaning up just because like I've lived on my own. Like I haven't had the same experience where people are just like super bored and don't know what to do with their lives. Like we got Netflix, we got Disney Plus, got Amazon Prime, like books. Like I don't know, it hasn't been that bad.
And we're not alone, so we at least have someone to talk to. Like my friend that was living in Australia, she came back and she's by herself and she's like just losing her mind. So.
And I mean, like we got Luna, who's our other roommate.
Perfect.
Who's she has lots of fun. She really loves this. But I mean, like honestly, like just even talking to people, like having a pet, has helped a little bit because we can like blame things on her when it's really the other person.
Sweet. So are you guys facing any problems getting the essentials like food, groceries, all that?
We're like kind of lucky and I guess like spoiled really. So both my parents are retired and they live in Lacombe, which is about half an hour from my house. So when we've needed things, we've just like text them. Like when we got back, like we had some stuff that we could think off the top of our head that we were going to like need as like groceries. And then, we've texted them like twice more in the last 2 weeks just to be like, hey, can you pick up like additional whatever. And I had like a deep freeze like full of like steaks and ground beef and stuff that I've had and chicken breasts. So I don't think even if we didn't have my parents that we would have been like in a huge amount of danger. We wouldn't have eaten any fresh vegetables. So, I mean, that would have been the big deal. And I've had friends drop off like some White Claws and some beers and stuff like that.
I think that's all I got. I mean, is there anything else that you guys kind of want to say just that you were thinking that you maybe wanted to get out?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Like it's been good. Not good, but I mean, like it hasn't been as bad as I guess kind of like we anticipated.